allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag for which it stands, of the United States of America, under God, to the republic, indivisible, for which it stands, and one nation, for all, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beautiful. And now if you'll please remain standing as Deputy Esparza leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag, as Deputy Esparza leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag, followed by the playing of our Texas state song,
Honor the Texas flag.
Our Texas.
I pledge allegiance to the Texas. One state, Texas flag. Under God. I pledge allegiance to the indivisible. Texas. One state, under God, one and indivisible.
You may have a seat if you would like. It's my honor to be able to give you brief welcoming remarks. If you would like, it's my honor to be able to give you brief welcoming remarks. I have the honor of serving as the Texas Secretary of State. I have the honor of serving as the 113th all of you for being here. Texas Secretary
Many of you have traveled a great distance,
and I want to thank all of you for being here. And we're so glad that you've arrived safely to be here with us today.
Texas
We're so glad that you've arrived safely.
Regardless of where in our state you've come from,
state capital.
you've all come for the same
Regardless
reason.
of where in
and
our
that is
state
to
you've
fulfill
come
your
from,
duties
you've
as
all
electors.
come for the same reason.
The U.S.
and that is to
Constitution,
fulfill
our
your
nation's
duties as
bedrock
electors.
document,
First
the U.S.
ratified
Constitution,
in 1788,
our nation's bedrock
dictates
document,
that electors
first
shall meet
ratified
in their
in
respective
1788
states to cast votes for president and vice president, following the general election for president and vice president,
in years in which
following
it is
the
on the
general
ballot.
election for federal
Each
offices,
state is entitled
in years
to a number
in
of
which it is on
electors
the ballot,
directly proportional
Each state
to
is
its
entitled to a
representation
number
in
of
Congress,
electors
which is
directly
determined in
proportional
part
to its
by the U.S.
representation
Census.
in Congress.
Texas,
which is
therefore,
determined
is entitled
in part
to
by the
38
U.S. Census.
electoral votes.
Texas, therefore,
As our
is
state's
entitled
electors,
to 38
all tasked
electoral
and
votes.
entrusted
As our
with the
state's
duty for which
electors,
Texas has been a
passed
part of
and entrusted
since its admittance
with the
into
duty for
United
which
States
Texas has been
in
a part of
1845.
since its admittance
For
into the United
175
States
years
in 1845.
electors from our state have cast
For
their votes on
175
behalf
years,
of the electorate.
electors from our
Reflecting
state
the will
have
of
cast their
Texans
votes
across
on
our
behalf
state
of the electorate
in helping to forge a
reflecting
path
the will
forward
of
for our
Texans
nation.
across our state.
Your
helping
actions
to
today
forge a
are
path
continued
forward to our
testament
nation.
to the strength
Your
of our
actions
democracy.
today are
as
a
our
continued
democracy is
testament
only as strong
to the
as
strength
the
of our
processes
democracy
it is built on.
As our
To that
democracy is
end,
only as
I want to
strong
commend
as the
you all
processes
for your
it is built
willingness
on.
to serve the
To that
people of
end,
Texas.
I want to commend
Despite
you
the
all for your
challenges
willingness
presented
to
by
serve the people of
COVID-19,
Texas.
you have not
Despite the
wavered in
challenges presented by COVID-19, and we thank you for your service in your duty to your fellow Texans. The Lone Star State. Thank you for your service. I also want to recognize Governor Greg Abbott for his leadership and his commitment to the integrity of this process. And now I am honored to call today's meeting of electors to order. As we continue in this tradition, today's meeting of electors to order. As we continue in this tradition, may God forever bless the great state of Texas and the United States. May God forever bless the great state of Texas and the United States. As required by the U.S. Constitution and our state laws, I will now conduct required by the U.S. Constitution and our state laws. Please stand and indicate your presence by saying here. As I call your name, if you are able to do so, please remain standing until the oath of office is administered. If you are able to do so, please remain standing until the oath of office is administered. Briscoe Kane, Karen Newton, Marcia Dowry, Briscoe Kane, Stephen Howell, Marcia Dowry, Jim Stephen Howell, Donnie Wisenbecker, Jim Pickle, Jimmy Weaver, Donnie Wisenbecker, Michael Jimmy Sabat, Weaver, Sabat, Nancy Michael Scott, Sabat, Bill O'Sullivan, Nancy Scott, Don Elliott, Bill O'Sullivan, Mark Ramsey, Don Elliott, Matthew Stringer, Mark Ramsey, Rena Peden, Matthew Stringer, Tom Roller, Rena Peden, Kathleen Nenninger, Tom Roller, Sean O'Brien, Nenninger, Thomas Edward Reynolds, O'Brien, James Gaines, Thomas Edward Reynolds, Tammin Hamlet, James Gaines, David Brugel, Tammin Hamlet, Ken Mercer, Richard Tex Hall, Ken Mercer, Mike Gibson, Richard Tex Hall, Marco A. Rodriguez, Mike Gibson, Dave Marco A. Rodriguez, Mary Jane Avery, Dave Gebhardt, Peyton Mary Jane Avery, Jean Seaman, Peyton Ing, Ruby Mannon, Jean Seaman, Randy Orr, Ruby Mannon, Harry Zenner, Orr, Paul Matthews, Harry Zenner, Matt Patrick, Paul Matthews, Carol Daly, Matt Patrick, Charles Hass, Carol Daly, Naomi Narvey, Charles Hass, Deborah Resinger, Naomi Narvey. There are 38 electors present. There are 38 electors. I will now ask the Honorable Chief Justice Nathan L. Hecht to come forward and administer the oath of office. Chief Justice Hecht is the 27th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Texas. He is the longest-serving member of the Supreme Court in Texas history. He is the longest-tenured member of the Supreme Court in Texas history and the longest-tenured Texas judge in active service. Chief Justice, thank you.
2020 presidential electors designate, are you prepared to take the oath of office? Presidential electors designate, are you prepared to take the oath of office? Then please raise your right hand, repeat after me, stating your name where I state mine. Then please raise your right hand, repeat after me, I, Nathan Hecht, do solemnly swear. I, Nathan Hecht, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office, faithfully execute of Elector of President and Vice President, of Elector of President and Vice President of the United States for the state of Texas, of the United States, and will to the best of my ability, for the state of Texas, and will to the best of my ability defend, preserve, Constitution and laws of the United States, Constitution and laws, and of this state, of the United States, so help me God, and of this state, congratulations, so help me God. Congratulations.
You may be seated. The next order of business will be the election of the chair of the meeting of the presidential electors. The next order of business will be the election of the chair of the meeting of the presidential electors. Oh, okay. I don't have that. If you will please remove the oath of office statement from your packet. If you will please remove the oath of office statement from your packet. Sign, date, and pass it towards the center aisle for collection. There you go. That's the slide in here.
And then I can do the next order of business, okay? Or at least they could all be seated. And then I can do the next order of business, okay? But you're gonna be, or at least they could all be seated. I got that way. But you're gonna be. Take a picture with Stephen. Take a picture with Stephen.
Thank you. Now that the oaths have been signed, the next order of business will be the election of the chair of the meeting of the presidential electors. The floor is now open for nominations for chair of the meeting. If you would like to make a nomination for chair, please come to the podium. If you're unable to come forward, raise your hand so that you can be recognized. At the podium, there is a script for making a nomination. Please use this script when announcing your nomination, including providing your name and congressional district so that this information can be reflected on the record of this meeting. I will now entertain motions for chair of this meeting.
Madam Secretary, I, David Brugel of Congressional District 19, move that Matthew Stringer of Congressional District 11 be nominated as chair of the electors and these proceedings.
Is there a second nomination of Matthew Stringer to be the chair of this meeting? Please come forward to the podium to provide your name and congressional district for the record if you are seconding the motion, if you're able to do so.
I, Tamon Hamlet of 18th Congressional District, second the motion that Matthew Stringer of Congressional District 11 be nominated as presiding chair.
Thank you. Do I hear any further nominations for the position of chair?
Madam Secretary of State, I, Ken Mercer, Congressional District 20, move that Richard Tex Hall of Congressional District 21 be nominated as chair of the electors in these proceedings.
Thank you. If there is a second for the nomination of Richard Tex Hall, please come forward to state second on the record. All right. Are there any further nominations for the position of chair? Yes, come forward.
Madam Secretary, my name is Randy Orr, Congressional District 29. Nominate Randy Orr, Congressional District 29.
Thank you. Is there a second? Do I hear a second nomination? Okay, if anyone is seconding the motion, please come forward. Are there any other nominations for chair? If so, please come forward or raise your hand if you're unable to walk to the podium. All right, so we have 3 nominations, one of which has been seconded. Is there a motion to close nominations for the position of chair of this meeting? Thank you. Would you mind coming to the podium to close it? Just want to make sure we get everything on the record. Thank you.
Dave Gephardt, Congressional District 24. I move the nominations for chair be closed.
Thank you. Is there a second on the motion to close nominations? If so, please come forward.
Marsha Daughtry, Congressional District 1. I second the motion to close the nominations for president.
Thank you. Is there any objection to closing nominations for chair? Hearing no objection, the motion to close nominations for the position of chair of the presidential electors meeting is adopted. Nominations are now closed for chair of the presidential electors meeting. Being that the electors have closed nominations for chair, you will now vote on these nominations. The nominee for chair of this meeting now is Matthew Stringer, not having received seconds of the other nominations. Is that correct? Okay, just wanted to make sure. And so the following vote will be conducted by a show of hands. All those in favor of Matthew Springer, please raise your hand and keep it raised until we have counted everyone. It's a show of hands to nominate Matthew Springer as chair.
There's just one nominee, is that correct?
That's correct, not having received a second nomination on the other nominations. All right, by a vote of 36-2, I now recognize the Honorable Chair, Matthew Springer. If you will please come forward to conduct the remainder of the meeting.
Y'all give me one moment to... Okay, thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first start by saying thank you. It was my distinguished honor to receive your support to serve as the presiding officer of this historic delegation. As chairman of the Electoral College, the next order of business will be the election of the secretary of the meeting for the presidential electors. The floor is now open for nominations for secretary of the meeting. Do I hear any nominations?
Chairman Stringer, I'm Sean O'Brien from CD 15. I move that Naomi Narvaez from CD 35 be nominated as Secretary of the meeting.
Naomi Narvaez has been nominated as Secretary of the meeting. Is there a second? Please come down to the podium.
Chairman Stringer, Michael Sabat, CD6. I move to second the nomination of Naomi Narvaez of CD35 as Secretary.
The name of Naomi Narvaez has been seconded for the position of Secretary of the Electoral College. Are there any other nominations for the position of Secretary? Hearing none, is there a motion to close nominations for the position of Secretary of this meeting?
Marcia Daughtry, Congressional District 1. I move that we close the nominations for Secretary of the Credentials Committee.
It's so been moved to close nominations. Do I hear a second to close the nominations for Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, Tex Hall, CD 21, the reddest district in the state. I second that we close the nominations.
I think for secretary, just because there's no opposition, you can declare it elected. Just ask if there's any objection to declare. Is there any objection from the body to declare the position of Secretary of the Electoral College as having been established as Naomi Navarez? Hearing none, Naomi Navarez is hereby declared the Secretary of the meeting. Would you please come down and assist? As chairman, we will now proceed to the balloting portion of this meeting. Ballots will be distributed for the office of President and Vice President of the United States, and I will hand these over to the Secretary here. We will be voting by secret ballot for President of the United States. The instructions are as follows. Please mark your ballot, fold it, and deposit it in the ballot box as it is presented to you by the Secretary of State staff. The staff will distribute the ballots momentarily. It is my honor to report to you that we have finished tallying the votes for the presidential electors of the state of Texas, and the vote totals are as follows. All 38 votes for President Donald J. Trump for President of the United States of America. As chairman, I announce that we will now continue with the balloting for the office of President of the United States of America, and we'll release the official ballots to the staff of the Office of the Secretary of State for distribution and marking. After tallying the votes for the office of President of the United States of America, I'm honored to report that all Texas's 38 presidential electors of the Electoral College have cast their ballots for the Honorable Michael R. Pence for Vice President of the United States. Proceeding to the next order of business, as required by the United States Constitution, we must prepare 6 certificates of vote. This document requires each elector's signature. The certificates will now be distributed to you by the Secretary of State's staff. Please be certain to sign above your typed name. You will sign a total of 6 certificates. As we begin to sign the certificates, Mr. Brendan Anthony will perform America the Beautiful. Thank you. Electors, just to let you know, it'll be a few minutes. It takes a little bit of time, according to the Secretary of State's staff, to prepare the certificates of ascertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow electors, I have received all 6 certificates of vote. I will now ask the Secretary to attach 1 certificate of vote to each certificate of ascertainment and place the appropriate envelopes which have been prepared by the Secretary of State's staff. These envelopes will be properly distributed following the adjournment of this meeting. The Secretary will place a certificate of vote and certificate of ascertainment in each of the designated envelopes, and this process should take a couple of more minutes. The meeting will come back to order. If the electors will please take their seats. I'm pleased to announce that the certificates of ascertainment have been completed. Thus concludes that portion of the meeting. The chair now announces that we will now move to the next portion, which is miscellaneous business. Do any electors have any miscellaneous business? Would the elector please come down, state your name, congressional district, and the nature of your motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, if I can get my notes out. Mark Ramsey, Congressional District 10. Having copies handed out of a resolution that I am proposing. It's based on something that the SREC did on Saturday. On Saturday, if you haven't heard, the SREC passed a resolution overwhelmingly to basically complain about the Supreme Court decision regarding the Texas case before them. And it had some other language that encouraged the other state legislators to try to fix the problem of the 4 states that were identified. I took this resolution from SREC and I modified it to incorporate unique aspects of the Electoral College. It is patterned after the one that passed already overwhelmingly and received very good response from people across the state. And I'll read it to you now. There are copies being passed out. It's entitled, Defending the Integrity of Our Constitution, Our Elections, and These United States. Whereas the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas condemned the moral cowardice of the United States Supreme Court in failing to accept the original jurisdiction of a suit by one state against another, which is expressly allowed by the United States Constitution in Article 3, Section 2. And whereas the United States Supreme Court ruled that it would not hear the case because the state of Texas lacked standing, and whereas as members of the Electoral College, we clearly have standing, and whereas the Supreme Court did not rule on the merits of the arguments, and whereas the Supreme Court refused its responsibility to hear a case under Article 3, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, and whereas neither Texas nor any state should accept a clearly unconstitutional process that, if left unchallenged, will harm its citizens' lives, liberty, property, and will itself set a precedent for future usurpations. And whereas respect for our Constitution requires that all attempts to usurp it and its specifically designated powers by any means, governors or otherwise, should never be permitted, in this case relating to the appointment of electors, quote, in such a manner as the legislature thereof may direct, unquote, from the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas call on the state legislatures of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan to convene and appoint their electors in accordance with the true constitutional vote of the people, or if undeterminable, by appointing their electors directly. And be it further resolved that in the event of a failure of the 4 legislatures to act as the above, that the congressional delegations of those states object to those 4 states' unconstitutionally appointed electors when publicly read January 6th. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to each member of the United States Supreme Court, President Donald J. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, the Governor and Lieutenant Governor of Texas, and the Speaker of the legislative bodies of each respective state. Members, Mr. Chairman, I move adoption.
Elector Ramsey has moved adoption. Is there a second on the motion? Would you? One moment. One moment. We have to have a second first for objections.
CD 24, I second this motion.
Please state your name, congressional district, and your objection.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Pickle, Congressional District 3. I'm in favor of the resolution except for the words at the very beginning, "the moral cowardice of." With that stricken from that, I would vote for the approval. Thank you. And I move that those words be stricken from the resolution as amended.
Is there a motion to second the amendment to the resolution? Please state your name, congressional district, and your motion.
My name is Tamon Hamlet, Congressional District 18. I second the motion to the amendment to strike down the words and keep the rest of the proposal.
Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? Please state your name, congressional district, and your position on, for, or against.
Tex Hall, Congressional District 21, speaking for the amendment. I, Don Quixote, come and tilt at this windmill. Kind of catches your attention. If I'd have walked up and said, I, Don Quixote, you ought to looked at me like my hat was on backwards. Ken Mercer would have probably done backflips and every other educator around, because while those words may have gotten your attention, they didn't get to the heart of the deal.
There's been an objection that the elector needs to maintain his speech on the motion, not on the resolution entirety. Please limit your remarks to the amendment to the resolution. Thank you.
That is correct, sir. So these two small words, moral cowardice, are like this fire ant bite I got the other day. It's little, but it's irritating, and everybody's had one. So when you throw those words out front, yes, you get their attention, but not in the right way. And I say that if anybody here can stand up now and tell Justices Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett that they lack moral courage, you better rethink things. So I stand with the amendment to delete the words moral cowardice from it, and you could even just substitute the word action. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on, for, or against the amendment to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Patrick, Congressional District 32. Speaking against the amendment. I'd like to leave the words in there. I wish I could give you a specific citation for this, but I didn't make note of it because it was something that I read this morning and I did not know we were going to be presenting this amendment yet. But there's a report available online that talks it was written by someone who's a current staffer for one of the Supreme Court justices. And this, I'll just describe the report to you that I read, and you can make of it what you will. He said that the justices, as they always do, went into a closed room to discuss, cases they're taking or do debate. There's no phones, no computers, no nothing. No one else is in the room except for the 9 justices. It's typically very civil. They usually don't hear any sound. They just debate what they're doing. But when the Texas case was brought up, he said he heard screaming through the walls as Justice Roberts and the other liberal justices were insisting that this case not be taken up. And the reason, the words that were heard through the wall when Justice Thomas and Justice Alito were citing Bush versus Gore from John Roberts were, I don't give up about that case. I don't want to hear about it. At that time, we didn't have riots. So what he was saying was that he was afraid of what would happen if they did the right thing. And I'm sorry, but that is moral cowardice. And we in the SREC, I'm an SREC member, we put those words in very specifically because the charge of the Supreme Court is to ultimately be our final arbitrator, our final line of defense for right and wrong. And they did not do their duty. So I think we should leave these words in because I want to send a strong message to them. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I raise a point of order against further consideration of the motion on the grounds that this body does not have authority to pass resolutions.
The elector's motion is respectfully overruled by the chair. Is there any other discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Oh, we have one elector coming down, it looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peyton Inge, CD 26. I think we've been looking across this. I'm going to speak against the amendment. We have been seeing around this country our representatives cower truly because of the violence of the other side. And it's time we call things what they really are. And it was cowardly what they did and a moral irresponsibility. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the motion, on the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Ramsey? Take a vote. Yeah. Recognize the amender of the motion to close. Mr. Pickle, it's your motion to amend, correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, close.
Jim Pickle, CD3. Been a constitutional appellate civil rights lawyer for 35 years. Been in front of the United States Supreme Court 9 times. Sending a message like this to a body of legislators or judicial officers is not going to get the attention that you want it to get. Nobody knows what happened in that conference room on purpose. The hearing, yelling, we're done triple hearsay, quadruple hearsay now about what was going on in that room. You cannot make your decision on that basis. You just can't do it. This body, if it passes a resolution, I'm not even sure it can, it needs to be the resolution of this body, not infected by what 5 other people maybe someday someplace said about what was happening at the Supreme Court. We either adopt the words moral cowardice, which are not legal terms, by the way, they're emotional terms, or we take those words out. The decision from the Supreme Court was very short. You can read it. It's one page. Just said we reject it because we don't have standing. That's a legal concept. I think there's just a few people in this room that understand what standing is better than I do. It's a standing issue. It's a legal issue. It's not a moral issue. Plus, I think there were a lot of reasons why they did it the way they did it, which might actually be favorable to us. So I would not put inflammatory language in any kind of resolution leaving this room that's going out to a body of judicial or legislative officers across the state because it makes us look childish, impertinent, and angry. And that is not the signal that the great state of Texas should send. Thank you.
Pardon me. Is there any other discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, we will now move to a vote. If all electors voting for Mr. Pickles' motion to amend, which the motion is to remove the words moral cowardice from the resolution, please raise your hand. And the Secretary staff, please keep them held while the Secretary staff tallies the vote. Would you please keep your hands up while you vote? You may all lower your hands now. The vote is 28 for the motion. The motion to amend. Oh, okay. Would all those voting against the motion to amend please raise your hand? I'm voting for the motion to strip the moral cowardice language. Yeah, I have my hand raised. You may lower your hands. It appears the vote is 29 for the resolution. And I was voting. 9 against, 1 absent. The motion passes. We counted you, I think it's 28. Mr. Ramsey, you're now recognized to make a motion. It's kind of lonely up here. Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, this issue had come up in some discussions over the last 24 hours, and there was some language that had been proposed to take out that moral cowardice term. If we simply leave it the way we have just amended it, it simply doesn't read right if we just took out those words. The language that was proposed last night by the other side actually was that it would now read, Texas condemn the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. So you'd basically be replacing the moral cowardice phrase with the lack of action by.
Are you making the motion?
Yes, so I move that we amend it in that form.
The motion on the table is to clarify the language to read, Texas condemns the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. Is there a second on that motion? Yes, please.
It was to remove four words, the moral cowardice of, not just moral cowardice. Got to be a paraphrase.
Well, I would still make this.
No, I'm just saying,
Okay.
it does read grammatically okay if you take out those four words.
So the current reading of the resolution is Texas condemns the United States Supreme Court. Is that correct? Correct. And Mr. Ramsey is amending to read as, repeat that again. Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, condemn the lack of action. And we do have copies of the language as proposed.
Is there a second on Mr. Ramsey's motion? Yes, Mr. Hall. State your point of order. Correct, but Mr. Ramsey's motion is to change the wording further. Is there a second on Mr. Ramsey's motion? Would you please state your name and congressional, are you planning a second?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Patrick, Congressional District 32. I second the motion to add the lack of action by, as recommended by Electoral Ramsey.
The motion is seconded. Is there any discussion?
Jim Pickle, CD3. I'm a little bit of a grammar nerd. If you say Texas condemns the lack of action of the United States Supreme Court in failing to accept, that's redundant. In failing to accept is the lack of action by the court. So I don't think this latter amendment is necessary if we leave in the words in failing to accept. Again, it's just a grammatical point.
Is there any other discussion on Mr. Ramsey's motion to amend? You were the one that made it. I know. Are you withdrawing it? Are you withdrawing it?
Yeah, I can do
that. With the permission of the body, that language was actually suggested to me by the other side, but I would gladly withdraw that language so we can get on to passing this.
The amendment's withdrawn. Is there any other discussion?
But he just withdrew. Well, he withdrew the motion to amend. I'm saying we can show that to the original motion. The original motion is to pass the resolution as amended. As amended. Unless there's some further discussion.
Yes, please state your name.
Sean O'Brien, CD 15. I just wanted to clarify because the original wording, the word is condemn, and you said condemns several times when you were repeating the wording, and it's just condemn. So
it should be an S, I think, actually.
Doesn't have
to. Do you have the reading of okay.
She can pass it on to you.
With the withdrawal of Mr. Ramsey's motion, we now fall back to the question on the amended version of the resolution from Mr. Pickles' resolution, which states, whereas the members of the Presidential Electoral College from Texas condemn the lack of action by the United States Supreme Court. Perfect. Singular, condemn. Correct. Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ramsey to close on his resolution. Is there any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Bruegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. There's something to be said for doing the right thing.
Please state your name and congressional district.
David Bruegel, Congressional District 19. In my view, there's something to be said for doing the right thing in the right venue. I find nothing in the United States Constitution or in state statute that authorizes us to take this action. So I'm going to encourage every member to vote no on this, not on the basis of the resolution itself, but acting under our proper constitutional authority. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amended resolution? Hearing none, the chair now recognizes Mr. Ramsey to close on his resolution.
Members, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, we have already honorably completed our statutory requirements, but we remain until adjournment a deliberative body. Deliberative bodies can go almost anywhere they want to go, provided there's not some prohibition against it. There is no prohibition against this badly needed resolution. America has been termed a shining light on a hill. When other countries have faced massive election fraud, the end result, more often than not, is a collapse of their rights, a collapse of their government, a collapse of their economies, and an inevitable slide toward tyranny. We can again be that shining light and show the world not to take this destructive pathway. About an hour or so ago, we took an oath, each and every one of us, to defend the Constitution. We have finished our statutory duties, but before we adjourn, this is one more thing we can and should do. Members, Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, I move adoption. Thank you.
The gentleman moves adoption. We'll now move to a vote. Those all in favor of the resolution as amended, please signify by raising your hand and allow for the Secretary of State staff to tally the vote. Show the chair voting aye. You may lower your hands. All those voting against, please raise your hand. You may lower your hands. The vote being 34 electors for, 4 against, the resolution passes. Is there any other business? Hearing none. Hold on one moment. Well, somebody absconded with my itinerary. Do you have the chart? Oh, there it is. Hearing none, we have a couple of announcements. The Secretary and I will be available after the conclusion of our meetings if you have any questions. The Secretary of State staff is also available after the meeting to assist with any questions you may have related to your travel expenses and allowable reimbursements. I would now like to ask the Reverend Gregory Davidson to come lead us in our benediction. If you would all rise.
Our constitutional republic works sometimes in mysterious and very solemn ways. This has been one of those solemn ways. I've been asked to give a benediction, and I want to affirm to you that this is not a prayer, but this is a benediction. Benediction is actually from Latin. It's 2 words put together, one meaning bene, which is good, and diction, meaning to speak. So benediction is a good word. And so what I want to send you out with is a good word. Hopefully it's a word that you could use this week and beyond. The word that I want to send you off with is balance. Balance. We hear today so much about diversity. We talk about diversity of thought, diversity of race, diversity of lifestyle, diversity of politics, diversity of everything. Is it any wonder why, with this emphasis on diversity, we don't have unity? The ancient book of Judges speaks of diversity in the days when everyone said everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and that is the ultimate of diversity. The results were not pretty. You see, the balance is somewhere between unity and diversity, and it's not one that can easily be resolved. The ancient philosopher Socrates had this problem. He felt like it was in the best interest of the constitutional state to have everybody united. Aristotle was the opposite way. He felt like there needed to be diversity to hold the city-state together. So you see, this issue of unity and diversity won't be solved here today, but I do want to offer perhaps a way forward. Dr. Barry Corey, who is the president of Biola University, sees it this way. He says we should have firm centers, but soft edges. Firm centers, but soft edges. By that, Dr. Corey means we should hold dearly to those things that are at our core, those principles that we will fight to the death for. But on the other hand, Dr. Corey says we should have soft edges. It's these soft edges that give us balance to keep us humble. The soft edges that allow us to love one another as we do ourselves. So in other words, soft edges allow us to share the good news that each of us has in our firm center. Firm centers, soft edges. So this week, and perhaps beyond, I send you out with the word balance. Celebrate our differences. Hold high those things that we have in common. but hold tight to that center. Do not compromise, but love one another. So I send you out this week with this benediction. Love one another and seek balance in all that you do. May God guide your steps, and now go in peace. Go.
Thank you, Reverend. Guess what time it is? Do I hear a motion to adjourn today's? Do I hear a second? All in favor of adjourning say aye. All opposed say nay. Ladies and gentlemen of the Electoral College, it has been my absolute distinguished honor serving you today. Thank you so much for the privilege of serving you. We are adjourned.